Alright, guys, today I was sort of thinking about, after watching a video that Joe Cole was in, and he said something about Mason Mount, about why people, don't seem to rate him. And I basically thought about it. Why do people, like, give Mason Mount a lot of slander for no reason? And I really couldn't get my head around it. And then I looked up at some statistics about him. And this season in the Premier League, or the one just gone, only 5 players in the entire league had more goal contributions than him this season. Which, I mean, it is good going, considering Mount is, a number. He's not even a number 10, really. He's like a fluid attacking player. He doesn't really have a position. He plays on, like, the right side of a free, but it's quite deep for a free. He's not a winger at all. It's quite hard to describe this position, actually. He probably floats into the number 10 role more than the player on the left. So we'll go with just attacking midfielder. The only players who finished above him were Mo Salah, Heung-min Son, who both won the Golden Boot, Kevin De Bruyne. I mean, Kevin De Bruyne is arguably the best midfielder in the world. Harry Kane, I mean, one of the best strikers in the world. And also Jared Bowen, who had, a very, very good season. So I also wanted to put, like, some statistics to the test. So I did this by myself. I picked 10 other players who I felt were some. Well, I picked a load of similar position players to Mount over the past 10 years in the Prem, who I consider to be, the best sort of over the past 10 or 15 years. Now, in terms of goals per game, in their first 3 seasons where they played over 30 games, this is how I'm doing it. So, like, for example, you could be a bit part player in your first 3 seasons. Mount has come in to Chelsea and has played pretty much every game straight away from when he came in 2019. So, goals per game, right. Out of the 11 players, including Mount, where do you think Mason Mount came? He finished 5th. Now, I'll say to you the players in this list. In order, actually, we'll go from highest to lowest. So, with the best goals per game ratio out of all of these, it was Dele Alli. Then it was Juan Mata, Kevin De Bruyne. Who else? Kevin De Bruyne. Then it was Paul Scholes, Mason Mount, Philip Coutinho, Christian Eriksen, Santi Cazorla. I haven't written these out in order, I've just put the places they're in. Frank Lampard, Steven Gerrard, David Silva. Right, so that is pretty good company to be in. We've established that. And he's 5th out of all of them. Now, he's not doing too badly there. You can't argue against it. But there seems to be this constant argument about Mount, how he's a boring footballer. He's not exciting like Grealish or Sancho or Phil Foden. And I just think that's the most pathetic reason of all time. Like, why is there this obsession with the England team about how everything has to be exciting? It's not worth winning unless we do it in an exciting manner. Like, I've heard England fans moan about Euro 2021 because England played a boring style of football. We were a few kicks of a football away from winning our first tournament in 55 years. What does it matter if it's not like, the most exciting football to watch ever? I didn't find it boring by any means. It was good to watch. Southgate had the team playing the right way. But the problem I have is there's this really strange sort of contradicting argument that some people have at the same time. So a lot of people try to bash Gareth Southgate about how he has this great talented squad but doesn't use them in the right way. But then if you look at all these individual players, for me Mason Mount is the best example, so this is partly why I've made the video on him. If you look at them individually, the amount of criticism each player gets is ridiculous. Jack Grealish, Mason Mount, Jadon Sancho, Marcus Rashford, Harry Kane, they all get a lot of criticism, I think, which I find really hard to understand. It's almost like football fans are so desperate to cling on to what they grew up with. Like, as soon as someone gives Thierry, no, it gives, just trying to pluck a player out of the back of my head. As soon as someone gives Raheem Sterling a bit of criticism, it's almost like, oh, but he's not as good as Thierry Henry, though, is he? No one's saying that. Everyone's saying that he's a good player. Like, people are desperate to hold on to what they grew up with. That's just how I feel personally. And I just find it really stupid. Like, why does everyone have to be compared to everyone? And first of all, when people say Mason Mount, but if Mason Mount's one of the best attacking midfielders in the Prem really is struggling. Well, from these statistics, the level of performance he's putting in, or his effectiveness in terms of how many goals he scores and supplies, well, it's up there with some of the best. Like, it's higher than Frank Lampard and Steven Gerrard when Frank Lampard and Steven Gerrard were his age, which I just don't understand it at all. Like, the thing of this, like, everyone's so quick to hype up these young players and say they're the next big thing. Now, I'm not saying I'm the most innocent person when it comes to this, because I have a series where I look at young players coming through the ranks that I think will be, good players in a few years' time. But I certainly don't try to big them up as, they're the next Ronaldo or the next Messi. I just say they'd be, for any big teams looking to bring in young players into their squad to develop and hopefully become a good player, these are the sorts of players they should be going for. But I don't understand how, like, Dele Alli's the best example of this. A few years ago, Dele Alli was playing really well. He was one of the best midfielders in the league. But then, obviously, since then, he's fallen off a cliff, effectively, his form has. Now, it's like, but I remember it being, he was performing really highly, like in 2016-17, and 2017-18 there's a little bit of a drop off because the numbers he was performing in that season were really like unsustainable. And as soon as that happens, people say, he's already in decline, like, let's just batter him, let's put him down. And like the damage that must do to, like, his confidence must be like unreal. And yeah, it's just everyone's so reactionary these days. And I feel the main reason Mason Mount doesn't get the credit he deserves is because the type of player he is. He's not a number 10, like a traditional one, like a Mesut Ozil, or someone who produces things that we've never, like, we hardly ever see in football. But what Mason Mount is just very good at doing the basics right. If I was to describe Mason Mount to someone who's never watched him before, I would say he's like a fully fit Adam Lallana, but at a higher level. So he's like Adam Lallana if Adam Lallana could stay fit and also produce a bit more consistently. Because I always felt with Adam Lallana that if he could just stay fit and get like a good run of games, he would go on to be a very good player, but he just couldn't stay fit. which was, you know, frustrating as a Liverpool fan. And I think Mount's a very similar sort of player. I think there's definitely an argument to be made that Mount was a, you know, it already is a better player than Lallana because he's doing it on a higher level. Mount has already won the Champions League in his career, which, I mean, nobody gives him any credit for that. He was Chelsea's best attacking player in the season they won the Champions League. But people will still quickly give Hatem Ben Arfa a load of praise because he had a couple of good not even a couple of good seasons. He had a few games in a couple of seasons where fair enough, he did something that was magic. But then people say the streets won't forget prime Hatem Ben Arfa. He's better than the players we have around these days. No, he's not. He only did it in 5 or 6 games a season. And and by the way, when I was drawing up this shortlist, there's players who I put in my shortlist to, compare to Mason Mount that they don't even fit the criteria to get into it. I'm just dumbfounded by it, to be honest. There's players who people will say are better than Mason Mount who haven't even played 30 games a season in the Premier League 3 times. I was thinking Jesse Lingard or Paul Pogba, in terms of attacking players over the past. Adam Lallana, Aaron Ramsey. None of these players have even managed to stay fit for 30 games a season. And people are already saying they're better than Mount. Phil Foden, there's a lot of people who say Phil Foden is miles better than Mason Mount. Phil Foden is still yet to play 30 league games in a season. I'm not trying to hammer him for that, but I'm just saying, why do people say that when Phil Foden isn't like Man City's number 1 player? If you look at Man City's most vital players, it is Kevin De Bruyne, Rodri, Bernardo Silva, João Cancelo, Ruben Diaz. And they're probably the 5 most important players. Whereas Chelsea's most important players, and admittedly Chelsea aren't quite at the level of Man City, Chelsea's most important players, Mason Mount, last season, Rudiger, Edouard Mendy maybe, Kante when he's fit, Kovacic I would say, and Reece James. Make it make sense. Why do people have this opinion of players that they're crap? It's the most pathetic thing ever. Anyway, the main thing to take away from this video is Mason Mount is a very good player. He's not the best midfielder in the world, but he certainly is good enough to be in the England squad. Right, anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.